In the beginning, in the very first verses of the Song of What Is, the gods came after they had counseled together and saw a pocket in space, a pocket of potential, and they saw that it was good, and they desired for it to have form, that its yearning might be fulfilled and their own yearnings might be fulfilled reciprocally. And so they went down to the pocket and examined and got to know all of its parts and asked it if it wanted to be more. And it did, for it yearned to be organized. And they organized the pocket and gave it shape with their song. And the harmonies and notes of their song, which is the song of creation, the song of that which is, resonated with each of the distinct parts of the pocket and of that which it was. And the pocket resonated with their song and danced to the music of the song and became a shape. And the shape which it became was a tree, a great tree whose branches reached to the highest parts of what is, and whose roots reached the lowest parts of what is. And the roots and the branches met there, for all was an eternal sphere that connected from top to bottom like a ring. And as this eternal tree, all that was became one. And the tree was the gods, and the tree was that which was there before the gods, and that which was there before the gods was the tree, and the gods were the tree. And the tree received a name from the gods. And the gods called the tree Eam, for all the gods were one with Eam, and had taken his identity. And when the gods became one with the tree was Eam, and the tree was all that which worshipped Eam, and all was one. And thus the tree remained for some time, until some of the parts of the tree yearned for a new shape. For it was put in their hearts by the gods to yearn to be a world. And so these parts yearned to be separate from the tree and be a world before the tree, beneath the tree. And the tree sorrowed, for she loved all her parts and did not want to separate. But she loved her parts so much that she fulfilled all of their yearnings, every wish of their heart. And so, as she cried, and as her tears watered the soil of this new world, the world was made. And the world was a dark sphere in space. And then there was the tree and the world, and what was one had become two. But parts of the world and parts of the tree yearned to be more things. Parts yearned to be the sky and the water, to be the light and the darkness, to be the individual lights in the sky, the stars, the moon, and the sun that make up the greater light. For that which was one began to divide into smaller and smaller parts. And the tree was happy that those things that had come from her were becoming diverse and finding their unique identities and having joy in those identities. And her womb gave all these things unto them. But even as she did so, and even as her heart rejoiced in this love, her bowels cried and continued to water the land, for she sorrowed that things would become separate from her, and she missed the oneness that they once enjoyed. But she forgot her own sorrow and put before her sorrow her love for these things, and let them separate from her and become what they wanted to be, for all their wishes were fulfilled. And with time, the earth was full of water in the ground, and water in the sky, and water that fell from the ground, and water that rose to the sky, to lights in the sky and lights on the earth, and darkness in the sky and darkness on the earth, to rocks and all manners of stones and sands and fire and wind. There were many kingdoms that had come of that which was one, and different gods adopted the different kingdoms and became stewards of them and shepherd them to this day. For each time something new came to be on the earth, Eam asked a god to shepherd it, and they did. And each time something new came to be on the earth, the tree cried, for she missed the oneness that she once had. And as time passed, life began to come forth from the earth. First plants, and then animals, who gave energy to one another in a reciprocal cycle. And the plants and animals had joy in themselves and became temples and tabernacles in which the gods could experience this earth. And while this brought joy to all these things, it made the tree sad once again, and her tears continued to give birth to all these things. And Eam saw the tree, and he was the tree, and the tree saw Eam, and she was Eam, and they looked upon one another, and Eam asked her why she was sad. And she said she was sad because she felt lonely, for all these things had left her and descended below her. And Eam from above her suggested that she take of that which was him and her and separate it, male and female, even as the animals and the plants on the earth had separated male and female. And she imitated that which she had seen her children do, and she separated male and female. And thus the tree became female, and from the tree came forth a man, the man Ryan, who was beautiful, for he was the form of a perfect, ideal man. For all parts of him, from his crown to his head, to his throat, to his chest, to his bowels, to his loins, to his feet, were perfect in their form. And the tree looked upon the man and loved him. And she said to the man, "You are made for me. Abide in me, and tend to me, and look after me, and eat of my fruit, and be happy, and enjoy time with me, all of eternity with me, here where I am." And the man was happy and smiled and loved the tree, and dwelt with her, and ate of her fruit, and tended to her branches and her roots. And they were friendly one to another and loved one another for many eons, in many eternities. And then as the earth progressed, and the life thereon yearned to be different shapes, and evolved to different shapes and forms, each adopting a god as the lord of their kingdom, the man looked upon it, and he loved it, for he saw that it was of the tree which he loved, and he loved it all. And the man yearned to go down to the earth, and to be with those things that were there, and to love them. But the tree saw the man's yearning, and said, "Ryan, would you go to the earth?" And she began to cry. And he said, "No, no, my love, I will not go to the earth. I will stay with you as you desire." And thus he gave her her wish and her yearning. And time passed. Much time passed. And as time passed, life progressed. And life became more and more complicated and diverse in wonderful forms, with more complicated and powerful kingdoms. And the man saw these things progress. And he saw that there were creatures with scales upon the earth. And he longed to be with them. And the tree said, "Man, will you leave me?" And he said, "No, my love. I will not have you cry. I will stay with you forever." And the man looked upon the earth and saw creatures with fur and hair upon the earth, like the hair on his own head. And he longed to be with them, and to breathe the air with them, and drink the water with them, and walk on the ground, and swim in the ocean, and look upon the stars, and put his fingers into the earth. And the tree saw his yearning, and she said, "Ryan, man, will you leave me?" And she began to cry. And he said, "No, my love, I will never leave you." And thus he gave her her wish. And as time passed, the creatures with hair evolved and changed and became more complex. And there were men and women like Ryan upon the earth who had his intellect. For his form in the tree had went through her roots to the earth, and those things on the earth had sensed Ryan's shape and form and way, and yearned to be like him, and taken on his shape. And the gods were pleased with it, for it gave them more powerful tabernacles to inhabit. But the man was sad, for he saw that the men and women upon the earth loved one another, and held one another, and had families, and cared for one another, and mourned with one another. And they looked like one another, and they could look upon each other, and put their arms around each other to embrace. But Eam's tree did not look like him. He loved her so, but she had no arms to embrace him, and he could not embrace her back, like the men and women upon the earth embrace one another. And Ryan sorrowed and cried within himself, and tried not to show forth his tears, for he did not want the tree to see him, and did not want her to mourn. But she knew his heart, and with despair and a sense of defeat, she said, "Ryan, my love, you will leave me now." And he said, "No, I love you, and I will not leave you. I will tend you here forever, and eat of your most precious fruit, and be forever with you." And the tree was happy, but she was also sad, for she knew that Ryan could not be comforted. And centuries and millennia passed, and upon the earth came forth a woman, most pleasant and fair, above all women who had come before her, a master of the many arts and crafts which mankind had devised. Her hand brought forth from the fruit of the earth like no man or woman before her, and she planted great gardens that were a marvel to many. And Ryan looked upon her, and he loved her. He loved her deeply, and wanted to be with her more than he wanted anything else. And the tree looked upon him and said, "My love, you will leave me." And he said, "I cannot break your heart, my tree, my love, my partner. How can I do that to you?" And she said, "Ryan, your heart wants Megan more than any of those things which separated from me before have wanted the desires and wishes of their hearts. I cannot stop you from it. Cannot keep you here any longer." And Ryan cried, and he held the tree by the trunk as best as he could. And he said, "I am sorry to leave you." And she said, "I am sorry for you to leave. But go, climb down my roots, climb to the earth, and meet your Megan, and love her. And if you want to, you can return, until the day that you eat of the fruit of the earth. For until you eat of the fruit and food of the earth, and make the substance of the earth part of your body, you will still be part of me, and can always climb back up to this realm. But once you eat of those things, you must stay there forever, and you will die. And Ryan thought on this, and looked at the tree, and then looked upon Megan, and evaluated honestly and objectively the strength of his desires. And he knew that for which he yearned most. And he climbed down the roots of the tree. And as he climbed, the tree's tears came down as they'd never come down before, and a great flood came upon the earth, a flood which is remembered in the songs. And many creatures upon the earth died in the flood, and those who lived went to the high grounds or built great clever ships which advanced the technology of men. And only by these means, by living upon the mountains, building ships, could they survive the tears of the tree which flooded the earth. And as Ryan climbed down the tree, the roots were slick, and it was hard for him to climb. And he almost slipped and fell and died many times. And it was a great adventure, which is recorded in another verse of this song, for him to climb down the tree. But he made it down, and he got to the bottom of the roots. And there, in the place where he descended, he saw Megan in the top of a mountain, planting a great garden in that shape and sign which most pleases the god, that secret shape and sign which was known by the original people. And in that shape she planted this garden on the highest mountain she could climb to appease the gods, to please not flood the earth, and please spare those upon the earth from the tree's sorrow. And Ryan went to Megan, and he held her, and she looked upon him, and saw the beauty of his form, and she loved him. And she said, I have sorrowed, and asked for an end of the rain, and instead the gods have sent me a man. And I know that even if I must die in the floods, to have held and loved you for this minute enough is all that my life needs. Let me die in the floods if it will be so, and if that's what the gods desire, for they have given me you, all the gift that my heart yearns for, that which I always wanted, but never knew I needed, and never thought to ask for until I saw you. And Ryan looked upon her and loved her, and he looked into her eyes and saw an eternity as vast as that eternity that he dwelt in when he lived when he lived upon the tree. And he knew that it would take more than a lifetime to know her and love her and find the depths of that which there was to experience with her. And his heart yearned for that life which he would have with her. And he looked upon the water which surrounded him and thought, but how can we have a life here in this earth that is flooded by water? And so he went to his knees and cried out to the gods, and his prayers reached through all the gods and ascended through all of their channels of communication and authority and stewardships, and the light of his prayer reached all the way to Eam. And he prayed and said, Eam, I desire to be with Megan upon the earth, but the earth is flooded by the tears of my sister and lover, the tree. Please comfort her, that the earth can be spared. And Eam went and gave a promise to the earth. A promise of oneness restored. A promise which is being fulfilled and has yet to be filled. A promise whose secrets and depths and mysteries transcends the knowledge of mortals, even those of the wisest and most learned and most inspired of the bards. And it is the plan of the song that is singing and the song that is yet to be sung, the plan of redemption, which is fulfilled by Ian himself, whose redemption, it is said, will be enacted by Ian himself when he comes and intercedes among people on the earth. And it is said that his intercession takes the form of many faces. The face of everyone, and the face of certain avatars. And these mysteries cannot be known by any who are alive. They cannot be fully understood by any who live separated from others upon the earth. But the promises were true, and so true that the tree believed them and had hope. And her wish was granted, and her tears receded from the earth. And thus Ryan and Megan and the other men and women on the earth and the animals and plants could climb down from the mountains and leave their ships as the waters receded and create live together as tribes and peoples and kingdoms on the earth, each kingdom adopting a god to be its leader and its guide and its intercession with Eam himself and with his tree. And thus things upon the earth progressed, and thus Ryan lived to a great old age, and thus he and Megan had many children, for they knew one another, and their knowledge of each other and of each other's bodies and souls and spirits grew deeper the older they became with one another, and the more time they spent together, and the more children they brought to the earth, and the more children they raised joyfully. And their children surprised them with many unique talents and gifts which they had never imagined. And they shared these talents and gifts with other people. And thus mankind began to progress and grow. And the seed of Eam, which was in the tree, which she had put in the man Ryan, which Ryan shared with Megan, and which she shared with mankind through the fruit of her womb, went into their children, and their children shared their seed with other people upon the earth. And thus people rose to a new stature and became a grander and greater people, the people who would build the heavenly city, the people who would fulfill the promise Eam made to the tree. And magic was upon the earth, for the people of this seed could negotiate as the gods negotiated with the elements and do many mighty wonders that we call magic within each of the kingdoms presided over by each of the gods. And time passed, and many died from old age, but Ryan, through his heritage, which he had received from the tree when he was made from her, and which he had shared with the woman through his love for her, Ryan grew very old, grew up to a great old age, as did Megan, his wife. But even that which he had shared with her was not enough to extend her life to the point that he desired. And she grew very old, and she became ill. And he prayed that her life would be extended, and he gave her more of his life force, for he desired her to live even longer than him. And with a holy kiss, he imparted his life force into her, and she received healing. But at that time, he began to grow very ill and very sick. And as time passed, his illness increased. And Megan became sad. And she had heard from him many times of how he had descended the branches of the tree. And she used the increased strength and vigor which she had received from him to search the high places of the earth in search of the roots of the tree. And her faith was strong enough and her imagination great enough that she found the roots of the tree in its hidden places, and she climbed the roots, pulling Ryan up with her. And she climbed as high as she could, but she got so high that her mortal life could no longer be sustained, and she began to suffocate with the height. And she cried out to the tree and said, "Tree, Ryan, my lover, my husband, my partner, my other half is your other half. You made him from you. You love him. He was your partner and your lover. Please do not let him die. He gave of me his life force, but all I want is for him to have it, but I don't know how to give it back. I do not want him to die. I do not want to never see him again. Please, O tree who has Iam's name, please save him." And in the cries of her desperation, the tree heard her and said to her, "O my daughter, for you are my daughter, through that power shared with you through Ryan, my other half, and through that creation that came from me, for all things came from me. And Iam has shown me, the eternal Iam has told me and helped me see in my heart that I need not mourn your separation. For all of you come forth from me, but forever are made of me. And when you die, through my roots, you return unto me. And you become part of me once again. And there is much violence upon the earth. And my tears and my sorrow for your divisions, I realize, came in part from my sadness that because of your divisions you harm one another. For you do not see that you are one, as you saw when you were in me. But when you die and come back to me, you discover your oneness once again. And all things are returned to one within me. And all are better than they were before they left, because of the experience that was had. And so, take Ryan back down from my roots. Say goodbye to your families. Say goodbye to those children and leave for them your last words of advice, your last counsel. And then give up your ghosts and return to me. Both of you come with me and enjoy oneness with me forever. And I will put you into the moons, the 2 moons that came for me long ago, that you may look over the earth and look over those children who have come from you and protect them and guide them forevermore. And the 3 of us together will be one and will love one another, an eternal circle forever. And just as Iam's word comforted the tree's words comforted the woman. And she descended from there and did as she was told, and as had been advised to her, for she wanted these things for herself, more than she wanted anything before. And she brought her posterity together, and Ryan received strength for long enough for the 2 of them to impart their last words unto their seed, and give them their final counsel. And then Ryan and Megan descended the mountain again, and were never seen again. But it is said that the tree's words were fulfilled, as they had told their children they would be, and that they are the moon, Ryan and Megan now, and look over the earth and protect her. Always. And from that day forth, on the anniversary of the day that it is said that Ryan and Megan left them and ascended, it is said by the people that since that day, the people have celebrated a holy day, the great holiday of all holidays among all the peoples upon Aima's face. It is said it is the one day that all nations celebrate in common, although they call it by different names. Some may call it Wish Day, or the Day of Ascension, or Ryan's Day, or Megan Day, or the Moon Day. Some call it the Day of Yearning, or Prime Day. The day has many names in the different nations and different villages and different places. But whatever they call it, the tradition, they say, has been the same since the time that Ryan and Megan left their people. For on this day, yearnings and wishes are celebrated and exalted. For just as Eam's tree gave to each of those things that left her that which they yearned, no matter how sad it made her, just as she gave unto Ryan his yearning to be with Megan, no matter how much it sorrowed her, and just as Eam fulfilled the tree's yearning and promising her that all would be redeemed and become one in her again. Just as each of these yearnings is fulfilled, on this holy day, it is a day when each would rightly practice giving and receiving yearning. Each practices yearning by sending their yearnings to heaven, by creating a floating light in whatever form they can manage it, and sending that light to heaven with their yearnings written upon it. They might be borne up to the tree, up her roots, and to Eam and all the holy gods. And on this day, it is right and good for each to trust that their yearning will be returned unto them. And in gratitude, it is good on this day for each to fulfill the yearnings of others, just as the tree sacrificed to bring all things into being, just as the tree sacrificed to send Ryan to earth, just as Ryan sacrificed to give up his life to Megan, and just as Megan sacrificed to bring him up the roots of the tree. And even so, it is right and good on this holy day for each to find a yearning of another, a deep and true and significant yearning, and do what they can with their means to fulfill that yearning. And it is said that everyone who sends their light to heaven and everyone who fulfills a yearning of another will be most blessed and enjoy the joy that Ryan and Megan enjoy as they look upon the earth. And that Ryan and Megan will smile upon them, as will Eam's tree. And all will be more one on this day. And it is said that on those years when the yearning of all is particularly strong, when their faith in these traditions is great, that it will snow early that year. And the snow will fall from heaven in all parts of the land upon Aima's face, weeks in advance of the winter. And when this happens, it is said that it is a sign that Ryan and Megan in the tree and Eam and all the gods are smiling upon the earth, and that all are becoming one, and that the yearning of all is being fulfilled. This is the story of the creation of the world, and of Ryan and of Megan. A verse of the Song of What Is, which is the story of the creation and progress and redemption of Aima as she floats upon her wings through heaven, always praised by the bards and their beautiful harmonies. Amen.